I never imagined a simple text message could shake me so badly. Yet here I was, staring at my phone, my fingers trembling, as if the screen were burning me. The words glowed coldly. "You won't be coming with us on the family cruise. My wife prefers to keep it just family." The message came from Matthew, my only son, the very same son to whom I had gifted a house just months before. A full home, debt-free, bought with years of sleepless nights, endless savings, and a heart full of love. Now, that house stood as a bitter reminder, because today, I wasn't considered family enough to share a trip I would have paid for without hesitation. My chest tightened as the blood pounded in my ears. My hands, frozen and stiff, typed only one cold reply. Okay, one word, one silent dagger, carrying all the hurt, betrayal, and realization that had been waiting in the shadows. My mind screamed silently. So, I was good enough to buy your house, but not good enough to sit at your dinner table. Not good enough to step aboard your cruise ship. But my face stayed still, calm, hollow. Something inside me, the part that had always swallowed their unkindness in the name of peace, died in that moment. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was Emily, my daughter-in-law. Her words arrived like a knife, hidden behind silk. "I hope you understand. It's just simpler for everyone this way." Simpler? Oh yes, simpler indeed. Simpler now that the house was secured. Simpler now that their future was tightly tied with my sacrifices. I placed my phone down. My hands trembled, but no tears fell. Tears had no place here anymore. Because at that very moment, an ember deep inside me flared away, a part of me that had been quiet too long, a part that would no longer accept humiliation as love. They believed I would remain silent and obedient, that I would accept being erased from my own family. They were wrong. The silence in my kitchen grew heavier, suffocating. Sunlight crawled over the tiles and wood I had chosen myself, the curtains I'd sewn, the countertops I had polished. All for them, for Matthew, for Emily, for a false idea of family. But that home no longer looked like love. It looked like a museum filled with my bad choices. Every photograph on the wall, smiling faces from vacations I had funded, now felt like proof of betrayal. Disney trips, Cancun beaches, Christmas cabins, all paid for by me. All gifts to a son and his wife, who now refused me a seat at their table. I remembered the housewarming party just months ago. Emily had taken my hands with tears sparkling in her eyes. "Oh, Olivia, you didn't need to do this. We're so grateful. You'll always have a room here. You know that." And like a fool, I had believed her. Because mothers always believe. I recalled painting their bedroom lavender, the color she wanted for peace. I remembered assembling every bit of furniture in my garage, late into the night, believing I was building a foundation for their marriage. But the truth was painful and undeniable now. I had not been family to them. I had been a resource, the purse attached to a woman who gave without stopping. And when my purse was empty, the woman attached to it no longer mattered. The next morning, suffocated by silence, I reached for the one person who still stood by me. I called Martha. She came, like always. No hesitation, no unnecessary words. She sat across from me at my kitchen table, saw my face, and spoke gently but firmly, as only old friends can. "Tell me." I slid my phone across the table. She read the message slowly, her jaw locked, but she didn't look surprised. Finally, she whispered, "They've been planning this, Liv." Her voice was heavy, but her words landed sharper than any blade. I swallowed hard. I thought Emily got inside his head. But Matthew, my son, isn't like this. Martha took my hands firmly. Her voice carried the truth I had refused to admit. "You raised a good boy, but one who never struggled, who always had you patching his world. And Emily saw that and molded it for herself. You made yourself small for them, and now they act like that's where you belong." The truth cut through me. For years, I had canceled my own joys to serve theirs, babysitting their pets, paying off their student loans, repainting their rooms, staying available on every call. Always useful, always silent. Martha's eyes hardened. "You need to protect yourself, Olivia, before they take even more." Confused, I whispered, "What more? They already have everything." Her voice sharpened. "Do you know if your name is still on the house? Have you checked your accounts? Or did you just trust them blindly? The knot in my stomach twisted. I hadn't checked. I hadn't questioned. Because they were family. Because trust had been weaponized against me. And in that moment, I understood. I wasn't a helpless fool. I was just too trusting. Too willing to be erased. Martha squeezed my hand once more. Protect yourself now, or you'll regret it. I straightened my back. For the first time in years, my voice came out steady. All right, Martha, we start today. Her lips curved into a small, grim smile. Good, because they're not ready for what's coming. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that message. Emily's fake polite smile. Matthew's distant nods. The silence of my kitchen felt louder than a scream. Martha's warning echoed again and again inside my head. Protect yourself now, Liv, before they take even more. At 2:17 a.m., I gave up on trying to rest. My heartbeat pounded like a drum as I reached for my laptop. For years, Emily had convinced me it was easier if she handled my online accounts. These things are too complicated, Olivia. You shouldn't stress yourself. Just let me manage it for you. And like a naive fool, desperate to believe in her kindness, I let her. But tonight was different. Tonight, I was awake, not just from sleep, but from years of blind trust. My fingers trembled as I typed in my login details. The dashboard appeared, looking normal at first, too normal. But the truth hides in the details. Slowly, carefully, I combed through every account, checking, savings, retirement funds. At the surface, everything seemed fine. Groceries, donations, little expenses. But the further back I scrolled, the colder my blood ran. There were small transfers, so small they were easy to miss, labeled as home expenses, property maintenance, or repairs. Except I had never authorized any repairs. When I dug deeper, I saw it. The destination accounts weren't in my name. They were linked to a secondary user. I clicked again, and there it was. Emily's name. My stomach dropped as the truth sank in. Emily had been quietly attaching her accounts to my finances, draining me little by little. Not enough to trigger alarms, but steady, like a parasite. This wasn't just cruelty. It wasn't just manipulation. This was theft. My son, was he blind to it? Or did he know and simply not care as long as the money kept flowing? A wave of heat surged through me. It wasn't wild anger. No, it was sharper, colder. I closed the laptop gently, like sealing a crime scene. I looked at the family photographs lining the walls. But this time, they didn't feel like memories. They felt like evidence. Smiling faces, posed vacations, Disney trips, all built on my money, my sacrifices. I whispered into the silence. Oh, you gambled with my kindness, Emily, and now you'll learn what karma feels like. For the first time in my life, I understood a dangerous truth. Silence isn't weakness. Silence can cut deeper than words. And they would soon learn what it meant when a mother who had been quiet her whole life finally decided to fight back. The very next morning, I called my financial advisor, Mr. Whitaker. I disguised my tone as casual, light. I didn't want to alarm anyone yet. Mr. Whitaker, I said smoothly, I just thought I'd review some of my accounts, to make sure everything is the way we arranged. On the other end, he cheerfully pulled up my files. Of course, Mrs. Gardner, always good to stay involved. I clenched my palms under the desk as he scanned the information. His voice shifted after a pause. Interesting. There have been some large recent activities. Quite a few fund transfers, mostly for what's listed as home renovation. Significant sums, actually. My stomach twisted. Renovations? And who authorized these transfers? I asked, my tone calm but sharp. Well, technically you did, he replied carefully. At least your authorized representative did. My throat went dry. Which representative? He hesitated. Mrs. Emily Gardner. She processed them under the durable power of attorney agreement. The one you signed last spring. I closed my eyes. I remembered the day perfectly. Emily had insisted on a small update to make things easier in case of emergencies. She had even brought a smiling notary. She had played me like a puppet. Thank you, I said, my voice steady, though my heart was raging inside. From now on, please flag every transaction before completing it. I'll handle everything personally. He agreed without question. I hung up, The silence in my kitchen was suffocating, but my fear was gone. Emily wasn't helping me. She had been positioning herself for years, piece by piece, stealing my future while pretending to be my daughter. But I wasn't helpless anymore. I picked up my late husband's locket from the windowsill, tracing the engraved date with my thumb. He had always warned me to be careful, to never let blind love turn into blind trust. Now, his warning echoed like law. I whispered into the empty air, "Love without respect is a prison." And today I found the key. The shelf, where their happy housewarming photo once sat, now stood empty. And strangely, it finally felt lighter. They thought silence meant they had won, but what they had really done was awaken something they had never expected. Because when a betrayed mother finally stands up, karma begins her work. The next morning, I was waiting outside my attorney's office before they even unlocked the doors. The weight of the night's discovery sat heavy on me, but my heart beat with a new kind of fire. Mr. Dalton, my longtime lawyer, greeted me with his usual soft smile. But when his eyes landed on my face, something shifted. Concern flickered behind his professional calm. "Olivia," he said gently, "I didn't expect you this early. Is everything okay?" "No," I replied firmly, sitting in the chair across from him. My tone didn't tremble. Not anymore. "I need to reverse the gift. The house. I want it undone." His brows rose slightly. Even he was taken aback. "You mean the property you transferred to Matthew and Emily?" "Yes," I answered without hesitation. "That exact house. I want the transfer voided. I want every account locked down. I want Emily stripped of any financial authority. And I need a full record of every transaction she's touched." For a brief moment, silence filled the room. Dalton leaned back, his expression measured but heavy. "Olivia, this will create conflict, possibly serious family tension." I held his gaze steadily. "They've already created tension. I was just too blind to see it." He studied me a long moment, then nodded. "All right, we'll proceed immediately." But I wasn't finished. My voice lowered to a whisper, sharp as glass. "And I want evidence, a full report of every dollar they siphoned, every time she used my name, every unauthorized move she made." Approval crossed his face. "That will be vital if this escalates." I gave a bitter laugh. "It's going to escalate. Let's stop pretending otherwise." He scribbled notes quickly, then looked up once more. "You may even need a private investigator. Emily isn't just reckless, Olivia. She's predatory. She's creating a paper trail to seize control of your assets long term. We need a counter trail, proof she can't erase." His words made my stomach knot, but instead of fear, I felt readiness, clarity. "Then hire one," I said coldly. "Whoever you trust, do it." Dalton nodded once. "The legal side, I'll handle. The investigator will handle everything else." For the first time in years, I felt lighter, not because I had solved anything, but because I wasn't waiting to be hurt anymore. For once, I wasn't defending. I was moving. When I walked back to my car, I allowed myself a bitter, almost victorious smile. They thought they wanted silence. They had no idea silence could move like thunder. The very next morning, I found something slid under my front door. A plain white envelope, neat, innocent, with a sticky note on top, written in Emily's familiar hand. "Just sign whenever you're ready, Mom. It'll make things easier while we're away." My heart stilled. They were already gone, floating on their cruise, sipping cocktails under the sun, while their trap waited to snap shut back home. I opened the envelope cautiously, unfolding a stack of perfectly typed papers. At first glance, routine, harmless, but buried beneath neat paragraphs and soft phrasing about estate simplification was something far darker. A permanent, irrevocable power of attorney. If I had signed, Emily would have gained absolute control over every part of my life, my home, my finances, even my medical decision. It wasn't inheritance they were after. It wasn't even patience. They weren't waiting for me to pass on. They wanted to erase me now, while I was still breathing. And Matthew, was my son truly this blind? Or had he chosen silence so long as Emily did the work of stripping me away piece by piece? Either way, the betrayal was complete. This wasn't family. These were predators wearing my son's smile. I placed the papers back inside the envelope, carefully folding them, as though I hadn't noticed. I set it back on the counter, untouched. Let them believe I would still sign blindly. Let them believe I was still that naive mother who never questioned, but that Olivia no longer lived here. By noon, I was back at Dalton's office. This time, my face gave away nothing except urgency. "They tried to slip me this," I said, sliding the envelope across his desk. Dalton scanned it carefully. His expression darkened. "This isn't just immoral," he muttered. "It's legally predatory. If you had signed this, Olivia, they could have sold your home under your own name, drained your accounts, even placed you in a care facility with no say." He expected panic to cross my face. Instead, I met his gaze steadily. Then we moved faster. For the first time, I saw something different in Dalton's eyes. Not just duty, but respect. "Everything's already in motion," he said. "The reversal, the freezes, the investigator. But after this," he tapped the envelope with distaste, "we'll push harder. Not another dollar moves without your signature." I sat straighter, inhaling slowly. My body felt different now, not stiff with pain, but steady with purpose. For months, I had been reacting. Now I was building a fortress they wouldn't even see until it crushed them. As I walked back into my house, later that afternoon, it no longer looked like home. It looked like a monument to my sacrifices and their entitlement. Every curtain, every polished fixture, every wall I once painted for their joy, now whispered the same truth. They believed they had won, but I had one more weapon they hadn't noticed yet: silence. They thought silence made me weak. What they forgot is that silence can also be the sound of karma sharpening her blade. 2 days later, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but I knew exactly who it was: my private investigator. I answered on the first ring. His voice was careful, measured, but heavy with the kind of truth that shakes the floor beneath you. "Mrs. Gardner, you'll want to hear this." I closed my curtains before responding, an instinct I didn't even recognize until after my hand moved. "Tell me." He didn't waste time. "Your daughter-in-law recently listed the property, the house you gifted them, as collateral for a second mortgage. She already started the pre-approval process with a private lender. The paperwork was filed last week." I froze, my breath sharp in my chest. They weren't just draining me now. They were gambling on top of my generosity, piling debt onto a house that was only theirs because I gave it to them. I asked quietly, "Did they disclose how they got ownership?" "No," he said simply. "They presented it as a clean transfer. No mention of coercive paperwork. No mention of unauthorized activity tied to your account. The lender was even impressed, called it generous family backing." I bit down so hard on my cheek I could taste iron. Generous family backing. They were dangling my kindness into the world as if it were theirs. They weren't just leeches anymore. They were gamblers playing with my life's work, my retirement, my very safety. The investigator paused, then asked, "Do they know you're aware?" I let out a long, slow breath. "No, and I want to keep it that way." We hung up. I sat in the dim light of my living room, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator. Every breath I took was steady. This wasn't panic. This wasn't anger. This was clarity. They had built their schemes under the assumption I would never question them. They thought I would remain the mother too desperate for scraps of love to dare say no. But they hadn't realized a simple truth. When a mother like me finally says no, it's already too late. I stood, smoothing the front of my blouse, and walked to the window. From here, I could see their house, the one I had bought for them. I let out the faintest whisper, almost a smile riding beneath it. "You gambled with my gift, Emily. Now I'll gamble with your future." That night, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat by the window, watching the street lamps stretch long shadows down the sidewalk. Outside, the world moved as if nothing had changed. But inside my house, the storm had begun. For the first time in so many years, I wasn't broken. I wasn't confused. I was calculating. They thought my silence proved weakness. They thought my calm was surrender. But the truth was simple. They had built a house of cards out of my trust, and I had simply stopped holding the bottom steady. I watched as headlights swept my living room. When a neighbor pulled into their driveway, the light brushed across the empty shelf where their housewarming photo once sat. The shelf was clean now, clean and honest. I whispered to myself, they gambled with my kindness. Now I'm gambling with their future. And for the first time in years, the words felt powerful. Because being needed isn't the same as being loved. They never loved me. They loved my money, my willingness, my silence. And now their silence, my silence, had become the blade they wouldn't see until it was too late. The next morning, the war moved into phase 2. Every day I sat in Dalton's office, flanked by him on one side, the investigator on the other. No emotion, no hesitation, just cold evidence piling on the table. Every withdrawal traced, every unauthorized credit card paid using my retirement. Every emergency renovation fund diverted into Emily's private accounts under her maiden name. At night, I should have felt sick, but the more we uncovered, the steadier I became. Emily hadn't just dipped into my accounts. She had used my name to apply for financial products, to build investments she thought I would never notice. She had gambled everything on my silence. Dalton slid another page across the table. This is textbook, greed dressed as concern, careful, calculated siphoning. Olivia, this would crush her in court. The investigator added, and the timing, slipping those final power of attorney papers under your door while they left for the cruise. It's a perfect cover. They wanted you legally powerless before you understood the depth of this. I nodded. Each word only untangled the fog of years past. They didn't want me gone, I whispered. They just wanted control. Dalton leaned forward. His voice was quiet but sharp, and they would have had it completely. Most people sign without looking. If you had signed, he didn't finish, because he didn't need to. I stared down at the evidence, feeling no tears, no breaking, only momentum. But I didn't sign. Dalton smiled thinly. No, Olivia, you didn't. And that one choice may have saved everything. We worked late into the night. By the time I left, the sky was dark once again. But I wasn't tired. I wasn't fearful. I was unstoppable. When I walked back into my house, I touched the marble kitchen counters Emily had once insisted on upgrading in their dream home. I traced them lightly with my fingers and whispered, "You tried to erase me while I was alive. Now I'll erase you while you're still pretending to smile." Tomorrow the filings would begin. The freezes, the reversal, the walls built high and tight, walls my son and his wife would never be able to climb. By the time their cruise ship sailed back into harbor, the world they thought was theirs would already be gone. And karma would be waiting at the dock. By the next morning, the battlefield was ready. Dalton's office smelled faintly of polished wood and coffee. The heavy stack of papers resting before me felt less like legal files and more like a loaded weapon. These weren't just documents. These were years of sacrifice and deception, rewritten in black ink. The notary adjusted her pen. Dalton nodded. His eyes dared me with reassurance. "All that's left, Olivia, is your signature." For a moment, my hand hovered over the page. Not from doubt, but because I understood the gravity of this moment. With each stroke of this pen, I wasn't just undoing a gift. I was reclaiming my freedom. My fingers pressed the pen firmly to paper. One page, then another, then another. Each signature ripped away a chain I hadn't even realized I'd been wearing. Dalton gathered the documents, his expression calm, but carrying a quiet triumph. "It's done. The house is legally yours again. Every financial access Emily held is void. They can't touch a cent, not your money, not your property, not even your utility accounts." I nodded once. My voice was clear, strong. "And if they try to fight," Dalton's eyes sharpened like steel. "We have everything. The investigator's full report, the forged documents, every unauthorized withdrawal. If they challenge you, they'll hang themselves with their own trail." I exhaled slowly. The fear long gone. For the first time in years, my future belonged entirely to me. 4 days later, the moment arrived. Their glittering cruise had ended. Tanned and cheerful, Matthew and Emily pulled up to what they still believed was their home. I watched from across the street, parked a block away. The new locks gleamed under the sunlight. Moving vans stood in the driveway. A young, smiling couple chatted happily with the realtor by the front door. Emily stepped out of the car first, sunglasses perched proudly on her head. She barked at Matthew about setting up the refinancing appointment for the second mortgage. Matthew scrolled on his phone absent-mindedly, nodding as usual. Then they froze. Two unfamiliar cars, boxes moving through the doorway, laughter that wasn't theirs coming from inside. Their perfect dream home fantasy was crumbling right before their eyes. Matthew spotted me across the street first. His voice cracked. "Mom, what's going on? Who are these people in our house?" Emily stormed forward, her tone shrill. "What is this? Why are strangers in our home?" I walked across the street slowly, calmly, every step deliberate. By the time I stood before them, their fake confidence was gone. "It's not your home," I said softly, my voice steady as a blade. "Not anymore." Emily's face burned red. She snapped, her voice cracking like a whip. "You can't do this. We're in the middle of refinancing. We have contracts." I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick folder. I placed it firmly into Matthew's trembling hands. "Here are the only contracts that matter." He opened it with shaking fingers. His eyes scanned the pages, his face draining of all color. Emily ripped the file from him, reading it with frantic urgency. The reversal paperwork, the sale documents, the investigator's report, proof of every siphoned dollar, every fraud, every betrayal. Panic bled into her voice. "None of this will hold up. We were helping you, managing things for your own benefit. You'll regret this when you calm down. We were helping you." I cut her off like a knife. My words were calm, sharp, unshaking. "Help? You mean draining my accounts? Forging papers while I slept? Gambling debt on a house I bought for you? No, Emily, that isn't help. That is theft." Matthew stuttered, his voice weak. "Mom, we didn't mean." I raised a hand. "Stop." The single word froze him in place. "You didn't mean to get caught." For the first time, I saw their faces clearly. Not masks of family, not rehearsed smiles, just fear, raw fear. I let silence stretch like a hammer over their heads. Then I smiled, a small calm smile that felt truer than any in years. "You gambled with my trust, and you lost. That's how karma works." Emily's mask broke. Her voice turned feral, desperate. "You can't just take everything from us. We built this life together. You don't get to destroy it because of a misunderstanding." I stared at her, steady, still. "You didn't build this life. You stole it, piece by piece, and expected me to never say no." Her voice cracked in desperation. "We're family. You can't just cut us off." The words hit me like a bitter joke. Family. The word they used like a leaf. "I was your mother, Matthew," I said softly, but with devastating finality. "And you made me your target." For a flicker of a moment, my son looked like the boy I used to know. Scared, small, lost. But that boy was gone. Gone the moment he chose silence over love. "This isn't revenge," I continued, my voice softer than a whisper, but steady enough to cut steel. "It's protection. For the first time in years, I'm protecting myself." Emily's fury collapsed into trembling desperation. She shoved the file at me and screamed, "You think you've won? You'll end up all alone." My calm smile never wavered. "Alone is better," I said softly, "than being used." And with that, I turned my back on them. My footsteps carried me away, steady, unhurried. I never once looked behind me. That night, I sat in my modest new apartment. No mansion, no grand house. But it was mine, completely mine, quiet, peaceful. As I locked the door, my phone buzzed. A message from Matthew. "Mom, please, can we talk? This isn't what I wanted. Please." Minutes later, another. "I'm sorry, Emily went too far. You know how she is. I never wanted to hurt you." I stared at the words, my lips curved into the faintest, coldest smile. Now that the house was gone, now that the money was gone, suddenly, he remembered to call me Mom. But I knew the truth. He didn't miss me. He missed the silence. He missed the bank account. My thumb hovered over the screen, then lowered. I would not reply. For the first time in years, my silence was not weakness. It was my freedom. I whispered into the quiet of my small, safe apartment. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Quiet is just another word for strength, waiting to be heard. And for the first time, I believed it. Karma had come full circle, and I had walked away free. The day of reckoning came faster than I expected. In Dalton's office, a heavy silence hung in the air, as the notary laid out the final documents before me. Each sheet wasn't just legal paperwork, they were my chains. And with one stroke of my pen, I would break them. Dalton spoke firmly. "All that's left, Olivia, is your signature." I sat straight, the weight of years pressing down and then lifting as I signed page after page, line after line. I cut the ties they had wrapped around me. When I finished, Dalton gathered the stack carefully. His calm voice held quiet satisfaction. "It's done. The house reversal is complete. Every authority Emily had is void. From this moment, they have no power over you. And if they contest," I asked. Dalton's gaze sharpened. "We have everything. The investigator's report, the account, the predatory documents they hid under your door. If they try to fight, they'll expose themselves." I inhaled deeply. This was not fear anymore. This was freedom. 4 days later, their glittering cruise ended. Matthew and Emily arrived home, tanned, smiling, full of careless joy, completely unaware. But the house they thought was theirs wasn't waiting for them. 2 moving vans stood in the driveway. A young couple laughed with a realtor at the door. New locks gleamed. Fresh life filled the walls I once built for them. Emily froze. What is happening?" Matthew's voice cracked as his eyes found me across the street. "Mom?" I walked slowly toward them. "Calm and steady," I said quietly. "Not anymore." Emily's fury flared. "You can't do this. We had refinancing in motion. We have contracts." I pulled a thick folder from my bag and held it out. "These are the only contracts that matter." Matthew's hands shook as he scanned the papers. Color drained from his face. Emily snatched them, flipping page after page with frantic eyes. The reversal, the sale, the evidence of every theft she thought would stay hidden. Panic seized her voice. "This won't hold. We were helping you, managing things for you. You'll regret this." I cut her like glass. "Help? You mean draining my accounts, forging papers, gambling debt on a house I paid for? That isn't help. That's betrayal." Matthew whispered, broken. "Mom, we didn't mean." I raised my hand. One word ended everything. "Stop. You didn't mean to get caught." Silence dropped heavy between us. On their faces, I finally saw the truth. Not love, not guilt, only fear. Then, for the first time in years, I smiled. A real smile. "You gambled with my trust, and you lost. Karma doesn't miss her turn." Emily's voice cracked into rage. "You'll end up alone." I looked directly into her eyes, calm and unshaken. Alone is better than being used. Then I turned my back and walked away. That night, in my small apartment, modest, quiet, but mine, I locked the door and exhaled peace for the first time in years. My phone buzzed. A text from Matthew. "Mom, please, let's talk. I never wanted this." Emily pushed. Another a few minutes later. "I didn't mean to hurt you. Please forgive me." I stared at the screen, cold and silent. Now that the house was gone, now that the money was gone, suddenly he remembered who I was to him. But I knew the truth. He didn't miss me. He missed my silence. He missed my wallet. I placed the phone face down. No reply. For the first time, my silence wasn't weakness. It was justice. I whispered into the quiet of my safe little home. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Quiet means karma is doing her work. And finally, I believed it. Chapter 6. The Sound of Freedom. The night after everything ended, I sat alone in my small apartment. The place was modest. No grand staircase, no shiny marble counters, no curated family photos on the walls. Just quiet, just mine. It was strange. For years, I had told myself I couldn't live without them. That silence meant loneliness. That without Matthew, without the family I had poured myself into, I would be nothing. But as the soft breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the distant sound of children laughing in the street, I realized something shocking. I hadn't lost anything. I had gained everything. The weight that had been crushing my chest for years. The endless giving. The humiliations I swallowed, the desperate hope that maybe one more sacrifice would be enough to earn their affection, all of it was gone. All that remained was peace. On my small kitchen table, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Matthew. "Mom, please, just talk to me. This isn't how it should have ended." A second followed almost instantly. "You know me. I'm still your son. Please don't shut me out forever." I stared at the words for a long time. For months he had barely called me mom at all. He had let Emily turn me into a resource, a checkbook with a smile attached. He let her bury me while I was still breathing. And now, with his illusions gone, with the house keys gone, with the money locked behind barriers he'd never break, suddenly, his memory of being my son returned. But blood alone doesn't bind family. Respect does, love does, and he had offered me neither. I turned the phone face down. I would not reply. I walked to the window, looking outside at the night sky. A crescent moon hung sharp in the dark, almost smiling with me. I whispered into the quiet, "You only miss me now that I said no." The words felt like scripture. For years, I had mistaken being needed for being loved. But need is a chain, and love without respect, that's just a prison. Tonight, for the first time, I was free. Maybe I will never hear Matthew say, "Mom," with love again. Maybe Emily will paint her own version of the story, casting herself as the victim, weaving lies to cover the rot she built. But none of that matters anymore. They can rage, they can scramble, they can sink beneath the weight of debt and shame. None of it touches me, because I closed the door, because I took back my name, my power, my silence. Some wounds heal, but betrayal by family leaves scars carved deep in the soul. And yet, scars are proof of survival. And standing here, from the ashes of what I lost, I finally understood the truth. Silence didn't destroy me. Silence saved me. Silence became my justice. Silence became my karma. The room around me was quiet, safe, and whole, in a way no mansion ever was. I sat down, folded my hands together, and whispered a final prayer, not for them, but for me. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Quiet means free. And this time, I truly believed it. In the end, it wasn't money that defined her worth. It wasn't the house. It wasn't the vacations. It wasn't the endless sacrifices she made. It was her silence. Because when a mother who has been taken for granted finally chooses silence, it isn't surrender. It's judgment. And judgment always comes. Matthew and Emily thought they had won. They thought control was theirs forever. But karma was patient, waiting for the moment. They overplayed their hand. They gambled with trust. They gambled with love. And in the game of blood and betrayal, karma always writes the last chapter. So remember, some wounds heal, but betrayal by family leaves scars that never fade. And yet, scars are proof of survival, proof that you endured when they expected you to fall. Olivia walked away free, and silence was her victory song. If this story moved you, don't forget, like this video if you believe silence can be powerful. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of betrayal, karma, and poetic justice. And share your thoughts in the comments below. Would you have done exactly what Olivia did? Because in the end, every story of betrayal carries one truth. Karma never forgets.